Thank you. I spoke about Naukri yesterday, and the topic is disruptive innovation. I'd like to tell you two stories. If you recall, yesterday I said that we drifted for the first 7 years doing small stuff before we launched Naukri, after I became an entrepreneur. So I'm going to talk about two businesses that we started very early on, and how we came across the idea. I graduated from IIM Ahmedabad in 1989, and I had gone there after working for 3 years in advertising. And in those days, companies went to the IIMs only to hire management trainees. No matter what work ex you had, they would hire you as a trainee. And I wasn't interested in getting my work ex written off, so I went outside placement to a company that was not coming to campus, HMM, and I got my job. And I came back to campus, and I went to the placement chair, Professor Srinivas Rao, and some of us older people from IIMA might remember him. And I said, sir, I have already got my job. I'm opting out of placement. And he said, oh, excellent. Then you're volunteering to help me in the placement process, right? And he gave me the job of a concierge. You know, the companies will come, you will receive them, you will escort them to Dorm 2 basement where the interviews are going to be held. You will make sure tea, coffee are served, the students are lining up on time, the interviews are going on. You will take them for lunch, which was the high point because we went to the MDC for lunch and it was much better food than the mess. And then in the evening, when they're leaving, you will escort them back, see them off the car and shake their hand and say, thank you, sir. So there were 3-4 of us doing this job because there were 3-4 other people also who would opt out of placement. They were writing the civil services. In those days, IIM grads also wrote the civil services. So the day one companies were Hindustan Lever, Citi, Bankcam, and P&G, right? This is 89. There were no consulting companies. There were no hedge funds, private equity funds, none of those, right? Typically, a company would send alumni to recruit, right? So Citi had sent 8 people, so they ran 4 panels. And Lever had sent 4 people, so they ran 2 panels. And Piyush was there from Citi. And I think Harish was there from Lever, if I remember correctly, right? And the Lever head of HR got worried that, Citi is running 4 panels, they're processing people faster. So what this Lever head of HR began to do was he had these pro forma offer letters, and if he liked a guy in the interview, he'd write his name and say, here's the offer, right? You sign it now, sign accepted, walk with me to the placement office and opt out of placement and don't go for the next Citi interview, otherwise I'm tearing up this offer. So that completely threw the placement system out of gear. There was a fight on campus, all sorts of things happened. That night there was a GBM, and I had a very objective point of view because I was out of placement. Yeah. But from this, I got my first business idea, right? And I came to the conclusion that, look, if this is how companies are going to compete for talent, then if we were to do a salary survey of what companies are offering fresh MBAs on the IIM campuses and price this report reasonably, the report would sell. So you could fund the research. You could basically fund the research means do it yourself. Yeah. And produce a report and then send out a letter and price it dirt cheap, say 3,500 rupees, and maybe 100 companies would buy. Yeah? Which is precisely what we did a year later. Right? I went to my junior batch, I got out the data, and because in those days, offers would put up on the placement notice board. Yeah. And we didn't have a computer. Computers were expensive, so I worked in a friend's office at night. I took a key to his office, and he allowed me in at 10 p.m. and said, leave by 3 a.m. And we produced this report, and we went to the JNU library and went through back issues of Business India and Economic Times and Times of India and took out from the appointment ads, the names and addresses, or the addresses of all the HR managers. And we sent out 600 letters. And within 3 weeks, we had 23 checks. That is 80,000 rupees. Now, 80,000 rupees may sound like peanuts today, but in 1989, the average salary in our batch was 44,000 rupees per annum. So this was almost 2 years of a fresh MBA salary with about 98% margin. So, which brings me to my first point. Successful businesses are usually built on deep customer insights. If I had not seen Citibank and Lever fighting, I would not have got this idea. The second business we did, my former partner, who was my partner in the reports business, we said, let's do, now placements is a seasonal market, right? 3 months and it's gone. So what do you do 9 months of the year? So he said, I have an idea. I said, what? He says, you know, there's something called the Trademarks Act. I said, yeah, I've studied it in lab, legal aspects of business. So there's under the Trademarks Act, there's this body called the Trademark Registry. It's got its head office in Bombay. Yeah? And it makes a lot of sense for companies to get their brands registered with the Trademarks Registry because it gives you protection. Right? The only problem is that the government of India takes 5 years to say yes or no to a registration. And companies can't wait 5 years to launch a new product. And because if you launch and at the end of 5 years, the government says, sorry, you can't register this brand name, you have to change your brand name. And you spend money on advertising and promotion, and that's a huge problem. So companies, and one of the big reasons why companies, why the registry will say no to a trademark application is because there's a similar or identical trademark that's registered or applied for before you. Right? So companies, now the archive or the record of registered and pending trademark applications is available for public inspection in the Trademark Registry Office at Fort in Bombay. Right? So what companies like to do is they'll hire a lawyer who will go and search the database or who will search that archive to assess your chances of registration. And they'll say, okay, this looks okay, this is not okay, this is identical, you know, and they'll give a report. So my former partner had an uncle who was a trademark attorney, and he had done his summer internship there at his office. And he said, you know, my uncle sent me to the Trademark Registry office in Bombay to actually do a search on the archive. He said, man, it is hopeless. The companies are spending crores of rupees, and the archive is maintained manually. It's not in alphabetical order in registers. It is in reverse chronological order of date of application in files with 2 pages to a trademark application, right? There were 6 lakh registered and pending trademarks across 34 categories, and your registration was for a category. He says the largest category is class 5, which is pharmaceuticals, 80,000 trademarks. He says, therefore, to do a manual search for a proposed pharma brand, you have to do this 1,60,000 times. Yeah. So he says, I went and did that, and I went completely mad. And you know, there were all these extremely low-tech lawyers around me. You know, koi cigarette pee raha hai, koi chai pee raha hai, they're doing this, they're gossiping, they're chatting. So the way it would happen is that a large multinational company or a large pharma company would brief an expensive lawyer who would then pass it on to an associate lawyer in Bombay, who would then subcontract to somebody, would subcontract to somebody, and the guy who did the search got paid 150 rupees for this. Right? And the law firm at the top charged 1,500 rupees for this. He says, this is hopelessly unreliable. Companies are spending crores on brands. This is the weak link. And I have seen it myself. Now, for the life of me, I would never have got this idea. Right? But this guy got this idea. And I said, yeah, you know, sounds good. He says, we have all this money from the sale of this, salary survey. What do? We can pay tax at the end of the year, or we can, spend it on building a new business. So I said, let's spend it on building a new business because we have 9 months a year to do nothing. So we may as well. So he went to Bombay by the Rajdhani Express. We couldn't afford to fly in those days. And he stayed with a friend, and he hired 10 kids from Elphinstone College, made them cut class, paid them 50 rupees a day, gave them registers, and said, this is a pharma record, and we pay the library fees and all that. And he supervised them, transcribing the 7-8 key fields from each record. And within a month, he was back in Delhi, carrying 2 big suitcases full of registers with the entire pharma record transcribed. We paid 14 paise to a data entry company per record, okay, and we got it put on Xbase, right? By then, we'd bought a second-hand computer from, all of that. And so my partner wasn't a techie, I wasn't a techie. But and you know how it is in IIM that you have a study group, and I did the marketing projects, the CA did the finance projects, and the engineer did the IT projects. I'm sure it doesn't happen like in SMU, but But IIM में ऐसे होता है. Right? So I was completely clueless. I mean, I'm not completely, but fairly clueless about how to do it. But I knew what was where. I didn't know how to do it, but I knew what was where. So I had picked up this textbook on Fox Pro programming, which is prescribed at IIM. And it is completely unsolved. I don't think I ever opened it. Yeah? And I looked at the solved examples, and I put 2 overnights, and I wrote a longish piece of code, very badly written, but it worked. Yeah? But basically, you input a string, it searches the database, and comes out with a short list of maybe 300 trademarks that could be, similar or identical. And then you do a manual shortlist by, editing, and then you export it to a text file and import it to in WordStar in those days, not Word. WordStar in those days, and then you print out and you have a search report ready. Right? And we mailed a letter to 5,000 pharma companies. We built a database from this, pharma association directories, and said, 350 rupees, we'll give you a search in 1 week. The lawyer takes 1,500 rupees and he does it in 6 weeks. 1,000 rupees, we'll give you a search in 24 hours, just to prove, we didn't expect you to sell, but just to prove that, it is on a computer actually. Okay. And we sent out a letter, and the thing began to sell again. So this, once again, successful businesses are built on deep customer insights. Right? If I had not had the insight of how companies compete on campus for talent, we would not have launched a salary survey. If my partner had not had the insight of how badly trademark searches are done, we would not have launched a trademark search. And really the foundations of our company is built on these couple of early small businesses that were financially successful in a small way. Right? Fundamentally, this is the point I made yesterday, you have to solve an unsolved problem. So all the young entrepreneurs out there who are starting out, technology is just an enabler. Do not be fascinated by technology. Are you solving an unsolved problem? Which customer insight do you have about that problem? So you don't take an idea from America and copy it. You start off with the consumer, and then you see what you can do with that. And then you join some dots and figure out something, and hopefully it'll work. Now, disruption usually comes from outside. It is very hard for a large company to do anything disruptive to a current existing business because you're defending too much legacy. Right? We were not an HR consultant. We were not a management consultant. We had no HR experience. We did the salary survey. We were not trademark lawyers. We were not trademark experts of any fashion. We were not anything. We did the trademarks database. Yeah? IIMPACT could never have been held in India.
That's not right.
Because in India, in every major city, there are so many alumni of each IIM, and we are also tribal. IIMA will not talk to IIMC, and who's IIMB? That you don't really need to come together, so you don't come together. But India से बाहर जाके India और Pakistan भी दोस्त बन जाते हैं, so what is? So I think this is a great initiative, and I was discussing in the afternoon with somebody that this should not happen in India. It may happen after 5 years, after you've done it 5 years outside. But I think it's a really good initiative, and maybe Singapore should become the permanent sort of venue for IIMPACT for the next few years.
Wow.
Yeah. So disruption comes from outside. It's usually a small innovative company, a couple of guys breaking away. That's the nature of things. It does not come from within a large system. And the truth is, So, we were doing small things, somehow surviving, making it work, getting along. And right place, right time, worked hard, worked smart, got lucky, whatever. Managed to raise venture capital. We had no grand plan or vision. Right? But nowadays, people say I'm a visionary. I say yes.
It's really good.
So for all the young entrepreneurs out there, just don't look for money. Look for meaning in what you do. Do work you love, right? Because that will take the pressure of time off you. You don't have to succeed in 3 years or 5 years. You're just doing work you love. The money you make is the happy incidental outcome of doing what you love. Thank you.